I think the role of the arts in Wellington as an employer itself is huge. I mean, it's known as the creative capital of New Zealand. I think possibly Wellington might be losing that title to Auckland a bit, especially with all the film work that's going on in Auckland compared to Wellington now. But if you look at companies like Weta Workshop, Weta Digital, Te Papa, it's all of that revolves around arts and culture. And I'm not sure off the top of my head how many thousands of people they employ, but Weta itself is probably in excess of 2,500 people. So that's hugely important. I think that's a massive draw for tourism as well. And I guess if you looked at the tax revenue from the arts and culture scene, Wellington would be massively in debt to arts and culture. Weta was the reason that I came to New Zealand. And kept me here, and I think it's got an incredible arts community, as has the whole of New Zealand. I think if you go around all these little provincial towns, there are always art galleries, art studios. It's everywhere, I think, and it's growing.
So does that mean the movie industry can be a springboard for mainstream art?
I'm a prime example. I was, yeah. I mean, it kind of it feathered my nest until I was ready to leave that industry. I'd been looking for a way out of it for years. I went to art school because I wanted to be an artist in my own right. I'd never considered the film industry as a career move. For me, I looked at it more as an apprenticeship, a way to kind of learn the techniques that I wanted to employ in my own practice all those years later. But without the sort of film industry as a backing for me to start with, I don't think, I would have found the route to becoming a professional artist in my own right probably more of a struggle. When I look back at my career in the film industry and the commercial arts industry in London and New Zealand, I look at those experiences and look at how they enriched my career now and kind of taught me an understanding of business techniques, as well as kind of really important studio practices and how to run a small business, which are things that you need, which were things I was certainly never taught at art school, and I don't know whether they are today, but I think that is a fundamental. It's so important to teach students this is how you take your art practice and make it commercially viable. And it's, you know, it's almost a dirty word to kind of talk about art and commercial activity in the same word, or in the same sentence rather, but they go hand in hand. You have to be commercially successful if you want to continue in your own practice.
I find that fascinating, you know, because there's no doubt in New Zealand we have thousands of really talented young artists.
Yeah.
So I guess one piece of key advice from you is that it's not enough to be talented as an artist. You have to have an eye to how you're going to pay the bills. You can't be starving in an attic all your life.
No, you really can't. You have to have some idea of how to take your art to the world. And in most cases that is through a gallery route. You show your portfolio to a gallery, they take you on board, and they're the ones, the gallery is the window to the world in which to sell your art. I took a very different route, but you know, there's not one avenue to sell your work. I think you have to do it however you can. But I would say that if I think back to when I was an art student, it was the one thing that I found that was missing, and I really wish I'd had during my 3-4 years at art school, was somebody come in and talk to you about how to make your practice commercially viable.
When you were working at Weta making props for Lord of the Rings, that was a relatively secure job. Was there one critical point when you had to make a leap of faith to leave a relatively secure job to become an artist? I mean, can you remember that tipping point, that pivotal moment when you decided to make the jump?
It was sort of serendipitous in a way. I'd been, as I said earlier, I'd been looking for a way out for almost 10 years. But the lure of kind of another contract and another paycheck, and you know, not having the responsibility of your own studio rent and all running costs of your own business, just think, I'll stick with the film industry. It's relatively safe as any job, you know, subcontractor job can be these days. So I was sculpting, I was working for Weta, and I was doing my own sculpting. I was doing commissions for Michael Hill and the like. And then I took a huge change of direction and started doing paintings and light works. And the lightworks, as you can see, are pretty big, and I was just getting ready for an exhibition, and I got about 10 of these things in the studios at Weta, taking up massively valuable real estate. And I thought, hang on a minute, this is kind of unfair to Richard Taylor and everybody else at the workshop, and a space that Weta had leased down the road just came available. And I thought, well, this is the chance. This is, you know, I had a financial cushion because I'd done some pretty good commissions for Michael Hill. I'd sold well at my first exhibition, and I thought, well, this is the chance that I need to take now. But it's a huge leap because commercial rents aren't cheap. My studio's 200 square meters. I need a lot of machinery, a lot of equipment to do what I do. So setup costs were massive, and yeah, it's a big gamble, but it paid off.
How do you price your work? Do you try and just aim for the top end of the market? I mean, what's the price range that people can buy your artworks for?
Everything I mean, I sell works from sort of $2,500 right up to $140,000. So there's quite a spread. I guess most of my artwork sits within the sort of $20,000 to $50,000 range. I basically keep spreadsheets of what a work costs to produce, all the overheads involved, and then a markup. And then, you know, after you've sold the first series, you let the market decide if that work sells out, then you can kind of increase the price. You know, traditionally, if you have a show of works in a gallery and the price is X, a lot of people would double the price if that exhibition sells out. The next exhibition of those works, very often the works are double the price, and then it goes up incrementally. But really, I let the market decide, and price it at what feels right for me as a gut instinct.
Finally, I guess for anybody who becomes really successful, there's usually a desire to give back. Do you think your major contribution could be teaching young artists about business and marketing and financial viability?
Yeah, I think, you know, there are lots of ways that an artist in my position is able to kind of, you know, teach that younger generation of, well, just from my experience, really, by talking to them. I opened my studio to schools. We had Scots College in early last year, and you know, they're a young group of kids, so that's a different conversation, but it gets them interested in the arts. I did an open studio back in February, and I gave a certain amount to Mountains to Sea, just charities that are important to me and different ways to give back. Yeah.